Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to episode 4 of Let's Chat, a podcast on our channel Unit 16 where we talk about all things tech. Now, as always, I'm joined alongside I've got Andrew with me, and we've also got a very, very special guest joining us today. We've got Mark Ellis from Mark Ellis Reviews.
Hi guys, thanks for having
Mark.
me on. Yeah, thank you. Your lovely studio that I'm very jealous of. Lots of inspiration today. Yeah.
So Mark, for people who don't know, can you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, what you do, and your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so Mark Ellis, the channel is imaginatively called Mark Ellis Reviews. And, I review tech, as you can probably guess, and it's predominantly Apple stuff. So it's predominantly iPhones and MacBooks and that sort of thing. But I do headphones, some audio stuff, not as much as you guys at all. Mm-hmm. But I tend to take this kind of everyman approach to it, where I've got no interest in benchmarks. I can't be bothered to sit there and do 18-hour battery tests. You know. The family wouldn't like that either. I just talk about tech, how it impacts me, how it feels to use, which isn't for everyone at all. I mean, it's a very high level look at stuff, but it seems to have found an audience that do like that stuff. And as you guys know, that tends to work, and you just go for what works. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing it now for just over 3 years. Yep. Went full time last February. Mm-hmm. And I love it. It's the hardest, but it's the best job I've ever had by a long way.
And how did you get into it? Was it just that you loved tech and you thought, I like tech enough to tell other people about how much I like tech?
I think like a lot of people, I kind of fell into it, although I've met a lot of YouTubers doing this, and I think everyone says the same thing. No one went into YouTube thinking, I'm going to be a YouTuber. I think probably the current generation, my son may do that, who knows? Up to him entirely, obviously.
He will take over the channel one day.
Possibly, yeah. As soon as he can, be great. I can go on holiday then. But I think the majority of people who have started a channel within the last, let's say, 5 years or so, fall into it generally. And I just started it in lockdown. I'm one of the lockdown creators, which there's quite a few of us. Yeah. I was in the garden with my girlfriend and just turned to her and said, I'm going to start this YouTube channel. Why not? You know, I hadn't lost my job or anything. Things were still okay in terms of work. And I literally just went for it from there, basically. It just all roads led to that. Basically.
What was the motivation behind that? Was it always something you've been interested in? Was it just like you said, a spur of the moment, like I'm going to get into this? Like what kind of led you to start?
I'm a massive YouTube geek. I know over lunch we were talking about Ali Abdaal. He was a big inspiration for me in terms of starting this, actually getting going with it really. But even aside from him, I've always watched tech YouTube. You know, I think we're all fans of Mark Ellis and many others. So I've always had a big admiration for them. I think like anything in life, if you really take an interest in something, you can see yourself doing it yourself at some stage. Yeah. So I think that was probably the motivation behind it. I think also because fortunately nothing bad happened to me during COVID in terms of work. I still had money coming in, which was great. So I had the luxury, if you like, of having a bit more time and just thinking, why not do it? And also, I've spent many years developing a whole bunch of what I thought were disparate skills. So, you know, I've worked in, I've written my entire life. I'm a writer really before a video maker, if you like. But I've worked in sales, marketing. I've worked in live audio. I've always had my own bedroom studio, music production, and I've had a massive interest in cameras since I was a kid. And I've even done videography and stuff as part of my previous business. So all these things that kind of didn't seem to make sense separately came together. And again, as you know, you need all that stuff for a YouTube channel. So it all kind of led towards that, basically.
What were the main barriers, Mark, from you jumping to the YouTube? Because I think a lot of people are worried, I'm putting myself out onto YouTube. Were you one of those people? Did you have the...
Not really. I understand why people think that. I think it probably depends what niche you're going into, because some are brutal when it comes to personal appearance. Yeah. I don't really care what people think of me. You know, I've got no hair, all this sort of stuff. I've heard it all. You know, I'm in my 40s now, and I think the older you get, the less you care about what people think. And you do go past 40 and you think, I really don't care what people think. So that was never a barrier at all.
I hear you, Mark.
we're there. I think.
Yeah.
So that was never a barrier for me. I think it was the barrier really was just time.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of time it takes.
All
your time.
I mean, we were saying earlier, weren't we? You don't realise until you start doing it how much time is involved. But it's just crazy.
It's an ongoing, never-ending job, isn't
it? Completely. Yeah.
And I think that's a good question as well. It's because how much time do you put in? What does that benefit the viewer in reality? Because ultimately you're creating this content to give the viewer a really good insight into the product, and it's how much time do you spend versus, I suppose it's this diminishing level of returns. You know, we've done videos where we really edit them a lot more, and does it help the customer? So I think it is a question that we have to ask. And, you know, what do you think on that, Luke?
Well, we talked about this, Mark, earlier, didn't we? So a little bit of insight. The top video on our channel right now, the sound link in comparison to the JBL speaker, I'll have a look at how many views it's on, but I know I've said this before, but I genuinely filmed that video in here on my own on a Friday afternoon. I was tired. The set looked horrendous, and I apologised when I gave the SD card to Sam, who was editing that video. And I said, I'm so sorry, mate. I will redo all of this again on Monday morning if this isn't good enough. And that video is, if you told me at the time that video would do the numbers, it's done now. It's on
726K.
Yeah, 726K. And that video probably, the editing obviously took a day or two, but that was probably 2.5 days worth of work.
But the content is really valuable.
The content is valuable. Whereas, well, we're literally working on the G3 video now, and I would love it to surpass that one day, but there's probably between three of us about 80, 90 man hours that have gone into that video so far. And, you know, it just goes to show, doesn't it, that obviously the production level or the value of having like a decent production level does go so far, but really it's the actual quality of the content in the video that matters more than the way it's produced.
Yeah, and I suppose that asks another question then is, obviously content is king literally, but it's how far do you go and what do you make, what makes that video so good? How do you get that? I know we've looked at other videos and we've watched reviews and really go into the comment section of that.
Yeah.
And
I think we actually are guided a lot by the comments on other people's reviews. So if we're reviewing a product, the most valuable place you can work out what people are still wanting to know is someone else's reviews comments, because if you're still asking those questions, that person hasn't answered it and the next person hasn't answered it, so therefore you've got kind of your framework to build on and you know what needs answering the next question. But I guess for you, obviously your main brand is Apple that you review. When you're up against every other man and his dog creating an Apple review, how do you approach that to make sure that your piece of content offers some added value to your audience?
I think it's really hard to find that unique. I don't think you can find a unique way to kind of presenting something, apart from the fact that it is you. There's only one of me. There's only one tech chap. There's only one everyday dad, etc.
Yeah.
So there's certainly only one MKBHD. But I think because of that, you just have to be. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. You have to just be yourself, and that's the thing that I've noticed since I started this. That the one thing I didn't really kind of take into account is that it would just be me that would carry it through with the right audience. And I'm not everyone's cup of tea by a long shot. You know, I get my fair share of people who do not like the channel, which is absolutely fine. That weeds out the people who you're not appealing to.
Yeah.
It gets the ones in who are. So it's things like stuff like being a British bloke with a fairly generic British voice. You can't really tell where I'm from, which is a good thing. Sorry, Northampton. But that, weirdly, and I didn't plan this at all, but that seems to work. People like that, and because the majority of my audience is American, they do like that generic British thing. Yeah.
They tend to trust British accent for some reason.
I think so, yeah. Well, why is that?
We don't trust any British accent.
Yeah, but it's very hard finding a unique thing. I think.
One thing I think I've noticed from watching your reviews is, and actually even from the video we filmed earlier today, is your complete transparency and honesty about things. You know, if you don't like something, you'll say it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the product isn't right. It just means that there are negatives to everything, really. Anything you review isn't going to be the perfect product. There's always going to be a downside for somebody. And I think that's something that your channel does really well, is approaches those kind of like, you might not like it for this reason. And that's something we've really worked on in our content as well, is like, you can say a negative about a product without saying the product is bad. You're just summing up that for certain people, that might not be a right product for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets some people, if they own that product and you say this is not right for X, Y, and Z, that's when they completely disagree and they're getting angry in the comments because they own that product and it might be right for them. And it's not as though we're saying it's a bad product. It's just, it may not be the best suit for X, Y, and Z. Well,
that's our job, isn't it? That's why we do this stuff. And I think for me, there's two things that are really important. The first thing is convenience. And we talked about this earlier on the video that we did, that I like a pair of headphones that gets everything right. Yeah. If they're the best sounding headphones in the world, I can guarantee they'll have a terrible case or they'll have terrible battery. There'll be something about them that's really annoying. But like you said, Andrew, that the people who love that brand, if I say anything bad about them, they come at you with pitchforks. What I love though is the products that get the whole baseline right, and they're convenient. And the thing you have to bear in mind with that is that you always have to make compromises with tech. Always. There isn't, like you just said, there's not a single piece of tech out there that is perfect.
For everybody.
I've never found it if it is. And I think every brand knows that. Everything is a compromise. If you buy a flip phone, it's got a crease on it. You have to keep opening it to use it. That might be annoying. If that's the case, it's not for you. But that doesn't, like you say, it doesn't make it a bad product. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding that, which I don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Such as YouTube.
Well, speaking of, I mean, I know we had a chat a little bit earlier. You started the channel in lockdown. Do you remember like what the first video was that you made?
Yeah, it was me sitting in the kitchen rambling on about a book written by Sean Cannell. People watching this may be aware he runs a big YouTube channel. I decided to do what I call the diary series, where I sat down for over 6 or 7 videos and just film myself. And the idea with it really was to get used to being consistent, so turning up every week and publishing one video, and also getting used to sitting in front of a camera, because as we all know in this room, it's a really weird thing to do. You watch for years people doing it and think, that looks like a lot of fun. And then the first time you sit down with the camera in front of you, you realise how weird it is. So I just thought if I approach it like a diary, and most importantly, don't care about the content.
Yeah,
I think the first
just
video
get
was
practicing it.
Exactly.
Just post something.
Post anything really, for no matter how long it is or how short it is. I think the first one was the book thing I was talking about. I started talking about a camera on the next one, and I think in one of the videos I'm sat in a completely unplastered bedroom, all the walls hanging off and stuff, which eventually turned into my first studio. But yeah, that was my first video.
So I guess moving forward from that, obviously gone way down the tech route. What would you say are like your favourite tech products to review? Is there anything in particular that I love it when I get hands on a new pair of these, or do you enjoy the aspects of all different products?
Not all products, no. Smartphones are quite tricky to review. I'm not answering your question. I'm saying I don't like to review.
That was the next question.
Come on to that. I think I love reviewing headphones. I think headphones keep surprising me. I had a Skullcandy got in touch, and I've never heard a pair of Skullcandy headphones in my life. It was the Crusher ANC2, which immediately has got a really funny name. So I thought, let's give it a shot. Let's give it. And they sent them across, like an embargo thing. Checked them out, and it had like a little red button on it, which I assumed was something to do with noise cancellation or something. And I didn't read up on them at all. I just literally got them out of the box and went for it.
Like most people do.
Even though we're sent press material, we don't always read it. So I just put them on and then pressed this button and realised that what it does is instigate this kind of feeling of bass around your ears. So it's like a haptic bass response.
Oh, you can physically feel it?
Yeah, you can actually feel, and the best way of describing it is like being a little bit too close to the front of house system at a really big gig, but it's not destroying your eardrums because it's just feeling it. It creates this very clever mind trick where you think something's very loud, but it's absolutely hilarious. It's one of those things where you put them on, and you start playing some drum and bass or hip hop or something, whack it up, and it literally made me laugh. And I thought immediately, this is a brilliant pair of headphones. So I love products like that go, and again, not everyone will like that.
But they're trying to do something different.
But it's a different experience,
Your Bowers and Wilkins crowd are going to think, what an idiot, why would you ever have that? But that's not the point. So I love those kind of things. I think headphones are a big thing for me like that. What else do I like? I like just interesting tech, things that are unusual and that come left field.
I think with phones, I mean, I don't know your opinion on it is, do you think every phone is such a small sort of bump that it's getting to the stage where you're like, they didn't need to release this? Or do you think, I mean, I buy the latest iPhone every year, which I do not need. We use it for work and we use it for that way. Otherwise,
excuse.
Otherwise I probably once every 2 or 3 years max. So do you think they've got to the stage in our phones where they are like, let's just do once every 2 years and make it a bigger spec jump?
Yeah, they won't do that because they have to, every year they have to show something, don't they, for investors? But they're boring. Phones are boring. And unless the phones flip or fold, which you get from Samsung and you get from Oppo and Google now, the iPhone is an amazing bit of kit. It's my main phone as well. I always have an iPhone and an Android phone, but the iPhone is my main thing. But the only reason this is ridiculous, but the only reason it's my main phone that I can't switch from is because I can do copy and paste from my Mac Not joking.
Yeah.
Really?
If I don't have that, if I only go out with my Android phone, I feel totally lost without it because of that one little feature.
It's AirDrop for me.
It's the same, yeah.
It's
similar technology.
ecosystem, isn't it? And that's why Apple is so
They're
powerful.
so clever, Apple,
Yeah.
and they don't talk much about this because they don't need to.
No.
So you get locked into it without knowing. But going back to your question, Andrew, yeah, I think phones are they're very boring, unfortunately, which is why I don't dislike reviewing them. I still enjoy reviewing phones, but it becomes very hard to work out what to say about them.
I mean, for me, it's sort of flip and folding phones are here now. Where do you think the next evolution is? Because that's been sort of for the last sort of 2 to 3 years. It's a flip, it's a fold.
You go back to the old BlackBerry next.
Yeah, well, I suppose
Keep us
if Apple bring one, it sort of brings a bit of life back into it. But then, where do Samsung go next from that? Where do you think they should go? Or
I think Samsung are much braver than Apple in terms of getting stuff out before it's possibly ready for the mass market. I mean, Apple will never bring out a folding phone unless you don't see that crease. And we're way off that technology being the case. So I don't think we may never see a folding iPhone potentially. Samsung, like I say, they'll throw everything at the wall, and I love them for that. I think Samsung, I love the fact they do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think the next thing, either fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, is the Apple Vision route. We could be here all day talking about that, but it's moving away from the iPhone and phones in general to having AR, mixed reality stuff, and what do they call it? Spatial computing.
first impressions of it for me with that is, I think, irrelevant of watching it as a movie experience. Obviously, that's a big part of it, and it'd be really interesting to see what that's like as that movie experience. For me, I think it could be really powerful as a work tool. I don't know what your first impressions of that are, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's got loads of corporate type applications. I just need real. I've spoken a lot about this, particularly on my blog. I've done a video about it as well, and I've kind of left it at that because I don't want to get involved too much more until I try it, really. Because in fairness, you do have to get this stuff and try it. I wasn't lucky enough to go to Cupertino and get one on my face for 30 minutes like a lot of people did, but I need a lot of convincing. My feeling with Apple Vision is that they clearly started it a long time ago, because it's, from what you hear from people who aren't working for Apple who have actually experienced it, it's genuinely amazing, like nothing you've ever seen before. The worry that I have with that is that they started it so long ago, and then the whole pandemic thing happened, which was for Apple Vision was perfect.
Yeah.
So you can imagine Tim Cook, quietly rubbing his hands at that, and then that period disappears, and we're back to roughly where we were before, and that kind of technology looks a bit daft still. Very expensive. I know they want to get to the stage where it's just a pair of glasses. I get that, but that is so far away, isn't it? I don't know what you guys think, but I mean,
it's like being in a video game, isn't it? Like there's a film on
First Player One.
Yeah. It's like it is that level. It's just, do we actually want that for ourselves, isn't it? Like, it's already bad enough being hooked to your phone. I already have guilt over how much time I spend on my phone. I won't do anything to change it, but like you already have that connection to something. Having it on your face then, where it's everything you're looking at, you're basically succumbing to the technology then, aren't you?
I think it's twofold as well. For me, obviously, I would love watching a film with my family and my kids. If you're all sat there with headphones, it's horrific. But at the same time, if you're a person and you're on your own, it may be more immersive for you. So it's
kind of like VR, isn't it? Like we've just done the PSVR 2. It's the sort of thing that is cool, but if you were gaming alone, it kind of makes it more of an experience. But it's not the sort of thing that I think I'd want to have in my day-to-day life.
Maybe that's why work. If you're in an office on your own, then maybe putting that on, it's not impacting anyone. You may be more productive. But I think it's like one of those things you need to use the technology.
But it's almost like it's like, when does technology get to the point where it's too much? It's too much in your life, and it's like you just don't need it to be that much.
It's like they show the videos, when people are looking at their phone walking and they miss someone walk past them. Yeah. The next stage of that is walking. They're walking with massive goggles. It's just
it's kind of what they're saying. I know, like I said, I know the end game isn't having that great big thing on your face. It's a pair of glasses. But at the moment, that is exactly what it is. And again, it comes back to the compromises thing, where what Apple has done with Apple Vision is to get around the whole being too immersed, is to have, if you're standing there on your own, if someone walks up, it recognises someone's walking up to you, and then it puts the kind of an image of your eyes on the front of it. And I did a TikTok about this, which is one of the most successful, in inverted commas, TikTok videos I've put out, where I just kind of say it looks really funny. There's no two ways. I laughed when it showed it.
It's quite scary.
Yeah. I just pictured walking to, if I went to around to my mum and dad's house, my dad was sat there with his Apple Vision on, and suddenly these googly eyes appear, like something out of the Minions. That's ridiculous. But again, it's a compromise made by Apple because, in fairness to them, they're thinking we don't want to have people shut away in this world. We want to keep the human connection. So it's a fascinating period at the moment.
Very interesting to see how it'll develop over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And for me, I think, again, it's entertainment. Can it take it that next level?
Yeah.
So, I suppose watch this space. When you get your hands on demo, Mark, you can let
Fingers
us know.
crossed, I'll let you know. I'll have to go to America to get it, though, because we don't get it for ages. So.
Talking about new tech then, what are some bits you're currently reviewing? One thing when we spoke to you last was the Nothing 2 phone.
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's great. So I've kind of finished the review period with it now. But I do miss it a little bit. I mean, I've still got it, but I have that thing where I have to keep changing Android phones. But Nothing is a really fascinating company. I don't know how many people in this room have tried a Nothing phone.
We've not tried them yet, but we followed it quite closely, so we are interested in giving it a go.
And we love their press launches.
Yeah, we do.
They're great. They're so. I mean, Carl Pei knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Very smart guy. Obviously, he's from OnePlus, so he's been through that kind of renegade smartphone thing before. I think the danger, and this happened to OnePlus, the danger with Nothing now is where they go next, because the Nothing Phone 2 is 180 quid more expensive than the Nothing Phone 1 was at launch, and that's starting to push it into iPhone territory. My kind of conclusion with this was what they do next will define them as a company. And they're not far off. In terms of the tech, it needs a better camera. The camera system isn't great beyond the main sensor. And it could probably do with the latest generation Snapdragon chip. But that's about it, really. Everything else, the design, the build quality, and their OS, Nothing OS is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a genuine differentiator, I think.
And the brand itself is a cool brand.
It is, yeah.
I think you're right there, because I look at that. I've looked at the headphones, the phone, and the other day I had an email. They just released like a Swedish House Mafia media pack with it for Composer. So for me, I'm pushing closer to investing in that first product. So I think whatever comes next, you're right.
It's going to define them.
Yeah, and I think if it's really expensive and it's that between an iPhone and that, I'll just go iPhone because I know what I'm getting.
Exactly. Yeah. So the iPhone's got the momentum.
I know my money's I'm going to use that product a lot, and I'm going to get out of it. So I think you're right. It'd be interesting to see where they do go, but they've definitely spiked, I think, a lot of people's interest.
They really have. Yeah. The lights are a complete gimmick. There's no.
I do like it though.
It's clever. Again, it's really clever because it does catch your eye, and people talk about it, and you show it to your mates and stuff. And but it's very gimmicky, and you don't use it after the first 2 or 3 days. But I know why they've done it. It sets it's a point of differentiation, which is important, really.
Following on from that, I know Emily said when I asked you a question earlier, and you said you like reviewing headphones. What's your sort of favorite, your daily driver headphones at the minute? I think because for me, we test loads of different headphones, expensive ones, and day to day, my XM5s are the headphone I use every day because I think they've balanced everything perfectly.
Do you ever get fed up with the case?
No, because I
just got a nice little headphone stand
on
his desk.
Okay. I was one of those people who doesn't take his headphones out.
I normally to be fair, ours are all work headphones, aren't they?
Yeah, and AirPods if I'm out and about, if I'm running or whatever. But
I'll let you off in that case. I think so. My daily drivers they change every few months. But bearing in mind, I have access to most headphones on the market now. Yeah. Some really expensive ones, some cheaper stuff. The one up until very recently, I was using the Bose QC45s. Yeah. Mainly because they're incredibly comfortable, but also they have a brilliant case. I'm very boring about cases. They're very small. I do very small case. Then I got the chance to review the Beats Studio Pro, which is the kind of 5-6 years later the latest Beats, and I was absolutely blown away by them. We talked about this in the video earlier, and I was expecting to be disappointed because Beats have a history of not providing the best sound and being more about image and all the rest of it. But I think since Apple has owned them, they've changed that, and they're fantastic.
What's the build quality? Because I was one of I probably bought one of the first ever Beats pair of headphones that were plasticky, gimmicky, overly bassy, and basically I bought into the hype, which I immediately regretted. But obviously now Apple have got them. The build quality
It's a notch above it was, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's still plasticky. And to be fair, I've only had these for a few weeks. Depends how they come. I do put my headphones through it quite a bit. So, it's better than it was. The sound is much better than it was. But it's just the overall package again. Again, going back to the thing about convenience and stuff, they just nailed it really. Yeah. I'm really surprised by it.
I'm surprised they didn't put an Apple chip in there though.
No, the reason they didn't do that is because they wanted better compatibility with Android.
Okay, makes sense.
Again, a very smart
Well,
decision.
I guess because if you want to go down the Apple route, Apple have got their...
Yeah.
And they don't want to take too many sales off the AirPods Max. And who knows what's coming next with that. But I think with the reason that they wanted very good compatibility with Android and they are cross-platform more than any other pair of headphones I've used, actually. Really good.
So earlier on, Mark, we filmed a video that's going to go out on our main channel very soon where we kind of went over the top 5 products each that we couldn't live without. I probably could live without a couple of my choices.
Pushing it slightly, weren't we?
Yeah. But tech that after I've listened to, lived with for a few weeks, genuinely some of those have really changed the game. So the first thing that I wanted to chat to you about was the Osmo 4.
Yeah.
Being into my cameras, the editing side of things, very selfishly, I was very interested in why that camera versus like someone like myself using GoPros.
Yeah, so I've looked at the DJI, which is an incredibly difficult name to say sometimes. The DJI Osmo Action 4 is like, for people that don't know, it's their kind of GoPro thing, really. And the obvious comparison would be with a GoPro, but I haven't really approached it with that. I've looked at it as a vlogging camera, which is very unusual for an action camera because normally you strap them to bikes and stuff like that. But I thought, no, let's do it differently and think of it as that. And I did this originally with the Osmo Action 3. A couple of months ago, and it just blew me away. It was just so convenient as a vlogging camera. Like I say, I haven't compared it against a GoPro, so I can't say. Although,
is it not a fisheye lens?
It's very wide, but it's got a standard field of view as well, which is great. But it's
so as a vlogging camera, you can still get it looking more natural. Yeah.
Yeah, even the standard field of view is actually wide enough for vlogging, I think. But
Okay,
so, yeah, in fact, actually, the wide one isn't too bad. There's not too much distortion and stuff. So. But again, as with anything, whether or not you're using a GoPro or an Osmo Action, it's what you're doing with it. And just for me, the convenience that thing gave me and the image quality and the stabilization, I've been surprised how much it's kind of fallen into my backpack as an everyday camera for filming stuff on YouTube.
Well, I think like you said, like you've mentioned a couple of times around convenience, there's something that's always put me off using action cameras, so to speak, is like the microphone quality, like, and what you get back from that. Because I know on the Osmo, you haven't got an external mic source, have you? So you're literally relying on the mic within that. And I know you were pretty happy with the performance.
Amazing, yeah.
Out of that.
Yeah, I was really, and not just me, my audience as well have noticed as well. Because when I did the Osmo Action 3 video, I had no idea what it sounded like. It was all out on the field shooting. Got back and thought, I really hope it's okay. And then I did the Osmo Action 4 video in the Lake District, and I went to Coniston and climbed the Old Man, and the wind was horrendous. If anyone's ever been there, they'll know it's always like that, no matter when you go. And I did a mic test up there, and it's in the video actually, and you can still hear me, and they're like 50, 60 mile an hour winds. But even without the wind, it's so impressive, that mic, and so surprising because they don't really pitch that. DJI don't push that part of it. You find this a lot with tech. There's always one feature they don't talk about. It's like, why don't you make a big thing about this?
Well, I think the other thing with that as well, like you said, the convenience of rather than walking around with like an A7 IV that we shoot on, pointing that at yourself, drawing attention to yourself,
it's
people wondering.
Well.
Yeah, it's the practicality of just taking something out super small,
inconspicuous. Yeah, I've done vlogging with an FX3 and a great big shotgun mic, and it's just your arm by the end. You've got one very big arm by the end of it, but apart from that, it's like you say, expensive. If you get mugged, it's a bad day. It's always a bad day if you get mugged, but particularly if you're holding an FX3.
Have you took the Osmo underwater? Right.
No. The most water thing I did with it was just put it in a puddle and step over it.
The reason when I take it on holiday, that's as far as I go. I take it on holiday with the kids. Every time I go in the sea with it, every time I try and bring it back up, there's always a little water drop on, like right in the wrong place. So I put it on my kids, and I'm like, "Oh, for God's sake, can they not figure that out?" So
that's true. Actually, that's a very good point.
It's always just there, and it always just ruins the shot. But
he's a windscreen wiper.
And how come using something like that rather than an iPhone or one of your Android phones for vlogging, like kind of on the go?
I do use the iPhone occasionally, but not even that. It can be a bit cumbersome and a bit annoying to use if someone rings you halfway through and that sort of thing. I think it's one thing with it actually. I think I demonstrated this on the video, is that you just, when it's turned off, you just hit record and it just starts filming within a couple of seconds. And then when you're finished, it's just convenience. I think going back to the whole YouTube thing, the more you do, more you get into YouTube, and the more your production process becomes important as the business grows. I've always been about processes. I'm very boring about processes, but the the less gear I have to worry about, if I'm not worrying about ISO settings and ND filters and because no one cares. You know, we were talking about one of your most popular video. You hated what you'd done. I've had this before as well, but you're not your audience. Your audience, you've delivered the right thing. People don't care about all that stuff, and I think you realise that the more you do this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's the benefit of having, like you said, whittling down your kit to just the essentials. You're kind of then more focused naturally on the quality of the content that you're producing, not necessarily visually, but you're actually thinking a lot more about what you're saying and what you're doing rather than the kit that you're using. So it's so easy to get caught up on that.
Oh yeah,
and like you said, for the most part, most people don't really care.
It's a distraction.
Yeah,
really. To be honest, unless you've got a big team who can do stuff for you. If you're doing it on your own, it's a massive distraction, and it can trip you up as well if your camera breaks down or whatever. Whereas these action cams just work.
Yeah.
So I know, Mark, that you listened to the DVD Dion earlier as well, and the Sonos Eras. What did you think of the Dion?
I honestly thought it was plugged into a subwoofer somewhere. The amount of low-end stuff going on was unbelievable for the size of it. It's quite a big soundbar, but it's not big enough to sound like it does.
Yeah. It does way outperform what you think it's going to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't do anything like that product doesn't do anything groundbreaking. It hasn't got anything special that another soundbar, but it just does everything really well.
Yeah.
But it is expensive. It is a bit more than you would expect to pay for a soundbar.
It is. I think you're getting a lot for your money, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like we were saying before, weren't we? If you're not going to invest in a fully plumbed in 5.1, 7.1, whatever system, then that is actually going to do a pretty good job for you.
It's
and
a pretty
cost
complete
a lot less.
setup.
Exactly.
And I think soundbars are an area that have got better so quickly. I think the last sort of 2-3 years after COVID, now that we're seeing a real acceleration in what they'll be able to achieve from one box.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be some other soundbars coming this year that keep pushing that forward.
Yeah.
I think the only downside to that one is I just don't. The bass is great, the upwards firing is great, the Atmos effects, and that's brilliant. You're just never going to get the sound from any further behind you with the soundbar. And to be fair, it fills the room really well, especially in this sort of space. Like, it bounces off the walls really nicely, but I don't think you ever get anything coming from behind you.
And that's why JBL have done I don't know if you've seen their soundbar where
They come off, don't they?
Yeah,
1300 one.
Yeah, and they're rechargeable, so you can just sit them behind you. But again, if you're sat down about to watch a film, you're like,
quick, better
go
clip the rear.
Can you go and clip the rear?
For me, that's faff. I hate faff.
Yeah, it is. And the Dion takes away all of that. It will just be for people who want the full immersion of things behind you. But I don't think everybody desires that. I think so long as you're getting an immersive experience, which you 100% do with that soundbar, for a lot of people, that's a very complete setup from one solution, albeit expensive. It's not actually that expensive when you compare it to like a full 5.1 setup that you can be paying for.
Yeah. And I mean, at home for you, Mark, obviously you love tech. How have you gone for your home entertainment system?
What setup do you have at home?
We've got a baby now, and Harrison just turned 1, so we haven't had the proper stuff
night
for
mode.
ages.
Night mode,
headphones.
Yeah.
So I've got, like I said, I've got properly plumbed in. That's probably the wrong phrasing for it. Channeled in 5.1, which is all monitor audio speakers.
Nice.
You'll like this. I've kept a KEF HTB2 sub. For years, because I've never heard anything that sounds as good as it.
Yeah.
You can't buy them anymore. Well, you can second hand. That's my sub, which I absolutely love. A Hisense TV. That's it, really. I've got a record player linked up as well, because I'm big into vinyl.
And you went all through an AVR.
Yeah, all through. Yeah, what is it? It's a Onkyo. Quite a simple setup. I mean, not a cheap setup, but I've kind of built it up over the years. And
but you don't. Sometimes you don't need more. That will do the job absolutely perfectly.
Works brilliantly.
Yeah.
And everything runs through the Apple TV now. So I used to have Sky. Got rid of Sky because it's just getting so expensive.
Yeah.
Just put everything through the Apple TV, and it's great. And I've listened to a bit more stuff on Apple Music now on that system, and you start to realise how much stuff is mixed in Dolby Surround. I had no idea how much it'd be, and we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? The kind of detail that the engineers are going into to make it, and it's great. Yeah, I just don't get to hear it quite as much at the moment because we need to make sure Harrison's asleep upstairs. That's one thing with kids.
And I think that's with the emergence of sort of Dolby Atmos music. I think that's where having an Apple TV gives you access to that as well. I think that's where Sonos win as well, because they have because you can't send Atmos over AirPlay.
No.
So obviously, because Sonos have that integrated service, they're the only one that does. They can send it directly to the speaker. So that's why speakers like the Era 300 and things like that allow you to play it directly, not over AirPlay. So I think at the minute you've got Apple and Sonos who are the only people that can properly offer sort of Atmos music.
Yeah.
So I think that will continue to come. have you any Atmos speakers around your home regarding that, or do you plan to?
Not at home at the moment. No, I've got the Era 300 in the studio and the 100 as well. But I'm using that mainly as a speaker in the corner of the room, doing all the normal stuff. I think we'd have to move. I think because I'm probably the sort of person who would want to do it properly and have things in the ceiling, and that sort of stuff. And we're not going to tear apart the living room again. At some stage, it's not a big thing for me. I think, again, until we start watching films with my kid when we can start doing that. I'd like to invest in it a bit more then. I think.
Ready for your Disney sing-along?
Oh, yeah, we're going to try and get past that. I'll leave that to Jen. She can do that. But yeah, that's kind of where I am with it.
And I think a lot of this, it's like sometimes if people, you probably do it, like obviously when you review Apple stuff, they have a MacBook that they've had for 5-6 years and it works absolutely fine and they see no need to upgrade that. And I think audio and tech, sometimes you might want to do it, you might want to upgrade, but unless you're sort of maybe renovating a room or you want to, we see a lot of people clearing away big box old systems and going for something a bit small like a soundbar. There's no real need to sort of upgrade.
I think it's a conversation we've had recently when we've been reviewing the G3 actually, is around the best thing about tech is it's developing really fast, but it's also the worst thing about tech, because if you're really into your technology, you get FOMO every single year, and it does become a dilemma as to when you bite the bullet. We've had a lot of conversations recently around, something like, is the Sonos Arc worth it this year? Because realistically, at some point, there probably will be a new Sonos Arc, but that doesn't mean that this Sonos Arc will become a worse off product.
Yep.
So I think the whole thing, and obviously as people who review new tech all the time, there is always some new reason to spend money or upgrade or change your setup or change your mind or regret you purchasing. And it's how do you know when is the right time to just go all in on a product and basically stop watching tech reviews that are going to make you regret it.
It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? But we see the best of everything pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
It does give you a very skewed view of this sort of stuff, which makes reviewing things quite tricky because the way that I use smartphones is unusual, because who walks around with 2 smartphones and keeps changing one of them every 2 weeks? No one does really. So it gives you a weird view of it. But I don't think there's never a good time, is there, to buy anything, because you can buy.
You'll always regret it.
Exactly, yeah.
Or not always regret it, but you'll always have a bit of FOMO from something else.
And me and Mark talked earlier, like I said, my TV at home is a Sony OLED and I've had that for 4 years. We have a new TV come to the office every week, we're watching it, and I've never felt the upgrade to change that. But this year with the G3 and maybe the A95L, if it's going to be similar, I think that now is the time that I actually want that at home. Yeah. But it's took 4 years of reiterations for me to actually notice it.
Bite the bullet,
So I think it all depends on you. I'm into tech, so I like it, and so for 4 years that's quite a long time for someone who loves tech and sees it all the time. So maybe for someone who wasn't into it, 6, 8, 10 years is a perfectly acceptable window.
That's a great video idea, by the way, guys. That's
what
when you upgrade.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I'm the same. I wouldn't change my iPhone as regularly as I do, because unless I wasn't reviewing them, basically, because you wouldn't need to.
What would you think do if you were Mark?
An average consumer.
Your average consumer.
I have a feeling, I think going back to that copy and paste thing, I have a feeling, because that's the main thing that's keeping me in the Apple ecosystem, I would possibly switch to Android occasionally. The whole stock. Yeah, I think phones like the Nothing Phone 2 potentially, and certainly the Fold, the Pixel Fold, and also the Flip 5 from Samsung. All of those would be really vying for my attention, I think.
Okay,
I suppose it's a weird one, isn't it? It's kind of chicken and egg. 'Cause would I ever have tried those phones? Probably not. If I wasn't reviewing them. But I think, without that kind of ecosystem thing, I'd probably go for Android for a bit.
It's interesting because MKHP, he always says he prefers Android over Apple.
Yeah, he's always using Samsung.
I was quite shocked when I heard that. I was like, why? I thought he was...
Never
I
thought
thought
that.
he'd be Apple all the way.
Yeah, no, he said he would go Android if he had if he had to choose between one or the other.
Really?
Yeah, he's been Samsung. I think he's had Pixels as well, but his main driver is normally an Android phone,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is surprising.
Yeah.
He's a Mac user, and
It's just so convenient to have everything the same, especially when it's like the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about Apple, which is obviously one of the main brands on your channel.
Yep.
What are you hoping to see from them in the coming 12 months? Obviously, we've got September coming soon.
Yeah, which is obviously the iPhone event, isn't it? And I'm not that excited. I mean, it's a big thing for my channel, and it's I'm not
tick a box.
It's tick a box, and maybe they'll surprise us. I mean, in fairness to Apple, I wrote about this recently. They're not doing anything wrong. They're doing as much as they can with what they're willing to do. Yeah, which is fine, but it's not. It doesn't make it a particularly exciting product. I think the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which is a rumoured to be happening later this year, possibly at the iPhone event. That will be interesting. I don't think it'll be a huge upgrade. I know Andrew's got one on his wrist. I do normally wear one, but I'm testing this at the moment. That will be interesting. I think the big one is AirPods Max. We talked about this earlier as well. What on earth will they do with AirPods Max 2? I realised how popular AirPods Max were when I went to America, to New York. Everyone, not everyone, but most people seem to be wearing AirPods Max. And you suddenly think, okay, there's a market here. Maybe there's going to be something interesting coming. So that I'm probably more excited about that, just to see what they do. Or what they don't do, or what they screw up potentially.
How long has it been since the AirPod, the first iteration, came out?
Ages. I think, was it 2020? Was it 20? No, it was 2020. So where are we now? 23.
Seems plausible that they would be bringing something out.
Yeah, and what we talked about, an interesting fact, just to repeat that for anyone off air, we talked about the size of how popular Apple is for their AirPods. Interesting fact about AirPods, Apple made $12.1 billion on revenue from AirPod sales alone. This revenue is more than Spotify, Twitter, or Shopify.
I mean, that's mad.
And how many SKUs? How many products? 4?
Yeah.
AirPods, AirPods Pro,
the Gen
AirPods Pro
3,
2, and AirPods Max.
Four products.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy.
But you were saying everyone you know has a pair.
I mean,
of AirPods.
But when you look at it like that, you think, wow.
Did you say 12?
12.1 billion. It's worth more revenue than Spotify, Twitter, or Shopify.
You'd be happy
Elon
with
Musk
that
will
on its
hate
own. That as a business, that would do fine.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
the one. Just the old. Give me the old AirPods. But why? Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Can you see a new iPad Mini come in? I know it's something we talk about in the video. It's been a couple of years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it will come, but it will be a fairly iterative thing. It will be faster refresh rate screen, maybe a little design change. Who knows? But again, that's such a good product that they don't need to do much with it. There's not really anything massively wrong with it, unlike the AirPods Max. So. Apple's in a very strange place. They've got a very good product lineup. I think it's very solid right across the board. There's too many products. I think it's a bit confusing.
Yeah, they are just becoming maybe a bit too predictable, aren't they? You're not watching that event in September, being like, what on earth they're going to bring out, because you've already seen every single leak you could have seen, and you probably could guess what it's going to be. So it would be fun, especially for tech reviewers, to be like, oh. Something different.
I mean,
so Apple, one of the main brands for your channel, obviously one of the main brands that we review on our channel, and one of our earlier brands that we started doing reviews for were Sonos. I know you kind of got into it with the Era 100 and Era 300 review, and I remember you saying that you used to have Sonos, but you went away from it. Do you want to talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, so years ago I had the original one, was it the Play 1? And a Play 3, I think, as well, and a couple of other Play 1s throughout the house. And then kind of moved house and stuff and just stopped using it, really, and started using very basic Amazon Echoes, just because all we were doing with them is setting timers for eggs. That's it. I'm not really a power user when it comes to the home devices. And in terms of music, that was kind of being catered for with the main system in the living room. So just didn't feel like I needed anything really. And then, Sonos got in touch and tried out the Era 100 and 300 and absolutely blown away. They're absolutely amazing. And what I love about them is the fact they are also home assistants. You know, they're probably the best home assistants you can get, the best sounding home assistants. And they just work. They don't. I don't know if anyone knows. I'm sure you guys you know much better than me, but I don't get any issues with Sonos.
I mean, we don't, but some people do. But normally that is someone's there's something wrong with their Wi-Fi. One of our biggest videos on our channel is how to reset when you change your Wi-Fi. Okay. So we don't experience it, and I think for the average person in a normal setup you don't, but as soon as you dive into Wi-Fi problems, that's when you start to see kind of
and it's like any Wi-Fi device. Like we have I know people get angry that when they swap their Wi-Fi router that they can't find their Sonos system on there, and there's no different. That's like saying I want to connect to my neighbour's Wi-Fi. In reality, because it's a completely separate device. You expect to reset your printer or whatever. So I think generally it's Sonos started, they are a software company. They have more software people than they do audio. Well, they used to, so I don't know if they still do. So they are software based. So I think regarding the software, sort of how that works, I think it's one of their massive plus points, and it just works.
And they sound great as well.
And then you've got the ecosystem to build on. So you've still got the 100 and 300. Would you consider branching out further than that, or is that kind of ticking the box for you right now?
So they're at the studio. I did have them. I had one of them at home for briefly, but at some stage I do want to try the whole kind of pairing them up and potentially having the surround sound thing. It's quite a big undertaking at the studio. I haven't got a huge amount of room for it at the moment, but I've got a few ideas how I can do that. But I did compare it with the HomePod. That was the biggest thing that
Yeah.
the biggest learning for me this year really has been confirmation of how bad Siri is. The problem I had, we put the HomePod in our house. We took out everything else that we had in there, Alexas, etc. And it started off fine, actually, to be fair. First few days, no problem at all. And then it was just horrendous. It got worse and worse and worse. Didn't understand me, didn't understand my girlfriend. You'd ask it to set a timer for the eggs, and it would take ages.
No one wants hard-boiled eggs, Mark.
Don't ruin my eggs.
Yeah.
But it did every time. But yeah, joking apart, it was just a horrible experience. And it got to the stage where Jen was saying to me, when are you going to bring the Sonos stuff back? She was really, she's at home most days, and she was really genuinely struggling with it, because we use this stuff, and I'm joking about the eggs and things. Well, we do use it for that, but
I
use
use
it
it
for
for
all
the
sorts
time.
of stuff.
Yeah, you do.
And you get used to using it, and it's just Apple at the moment. Maybe they'll surprise us actually in September. Who knows? There are rumours about this.
Siri 2.
Siri 2, Siri GPT, all this sort of stuff. But yeah, that's the other thing with Sonos. I just love the integration with Alexa.
Well, maybe they will do, talking about the Beat Studio Pro earlier, maybe they'll release a Beat speaker that can be a bit more open and a bit more agnostic to other
potentially
Spotify Connect.
Hope
That's
so.
how they get around it, I suppose.
I'd love them to do that. Yeah.
So, Mark, thank you very much for coming down to the studio today. We've obviously got our main channel video that's going to be going out very soon, where we talk about our top 5 tech products that we keep saying can't live without, but we'll see what everyone reckons to that. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed coming down, filming with us today, and thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Let's Chat. And fingers crossed we'll be doing something over on your channel very soon as well, all being well.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me, guys. It's been brilliant. I've loved it.
So that concludes this episode of today's Let's Chat. Guys, please let us know down in the comments below if there's anything that we've talked about that you want to get involved in. Then obviously let us know your thoughts on all of that. Mark, again, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see all of you guys in the next episode.